Every time I think Rings of Power can't possibly get any worse, the writers, much like an anime protagonist, dig deep down within themselves and find a new level of awful. This is the Dumbest Things About Rings of Power, Episode 7. Let's start with Galadriel. If you haven't yet seen Episode 7, well, first, I envy you, but second, I have bad news. Galadriel survived. How she did so, however, is something of a mystery. If you'll remember, last week's episode ended with Galadriel being swallowed by an evil volcanic eruption. Yet this week opens with her regaining consciousness amidst the flaming ruins of the Southlands. She's covered in ash and dirt, but otherwise fine. And no explanation is given. The writers didn't pull some magical elven immunity to heat or lava out of their asses, and she wasn't rescued. Not that anyone who knows her actually would. She's just fine. Now that's a special kind of plot armor. Out of curiosity, I did a bit of research on the old Google machine, and it turns out that pyroclastic flows can travel at speeds greater than 50 miles per hour and range in temperatures between 390 and 1300 degrees Fahrenheit. Even on the margins of the flow, the heat and gas can still be lethal. Galadriel walked into it and was completely enveloped, but she's perfectly fine. The writers didn't even feel the need to bullshit an excuse. But let's set aside her miraculous survival for a second. After she regains consciousness in a town engulfed in flames and haunted by the screams of the dying, she does the most Galadriel thing imaginable. She leaves. Her and Theo just calmly walk away, leaving any potential survivors to fend for themselves. Now, if the threat of genocide and torture the other week didn't give it away already, this should seal it. Galadriel is not a hero. She's a terrible, utterly unlikable person. Heroes don't threaten to murder people's loved ones or leave injured and dying people to burn to death. This should be obvious. Now, all of this would be fine for a villain arc. Think Arthas burning Stratholme. Villains who begin their journeys as heroes are often incredibly compelling characters. But that's not what's happening with Galadriel. It seems as though the writers genuinely believe she's behaving like a hero. And that's disturbing. So, to prevent skipping back and forth, I'm just going to lump all of the stupidity amongst the Númenóreans together. First, let's start with the obvious. So, unlike Galadriel, the Queen apparently isn't completely immune to damage, just mostly. While escaping from a burning building after the eruption, she catches a face full of burning embers and is blinded. That sucks, obviously. But why did she feel the need to hide it? It doesn't make sense. She's not a great general or warrior, so a non-lethal injury to her isn't going to destroy the troops' morale. But even if you think it could, why would it matter at this point? They're leaving. They are headed back to the boats as she's riding her horse. It just doesn't make sense. And it's not like the moment her weakness is revealed, she'll be killed and replaced by a stronger leader. I mean, let's be honest. If Númenor were the type of society to be ruled by the strongest warlord at any given time, a 105-pound woman with no combat training wouldn't be the leader anyway. There's just no discernible reason for her to try to hide her blindness. But let's say that you were trying to hide it, just for the sake of argument. Maybe don't wear a cloth around your eyes like fucking Daredevil. Now, let's discuss Elendil. Since his introduction, Elendil has been among the only characters in the show I can stand. But he just pissed me off in this one. He was one of the main voices who supported the war in the Southlands. His vouching for and defense of Galadriel was pivotal in the Queen's decision. And he's not stupid. He knows that war means dead sons. And he was perfectly fine with that right up until it was his son. Then it was all a complete mistake. Now, obviously, Isildur isn't actually dead. We know he plays an important role in the events to come. But Elendil doesn't know that. And his sudden change of heart is just infuriating. Maybe he should have considered these things while it actually mattered, when he could have prevented it. So as much as I've liked him up to this point, it's hard to have much pity for him. Now, unfortunately, we have to discuss the Harfoots. So when we first check in on these dirty little psychopaths, They have finally arrived at their destination, only to find that the verdant hills they expected have been transformed into an uninhabitable wasteland. The volcano had destroyed the surrounding area and corrupted the available food. So Not Gandalf uses magic to try and reverse the decay. And while he's chanting and casting on the tree, one of the Harfoot's idiot kids runs up next to him, and part of the tree collapses. This was incomprehensibly stupid. Yet, rather than take responsibility for allowing a small child to approach the volatile magics, the Harfoots once again blame Not Gandalf, who was only trying to help them as usual. They look at him like he's some sort of monster, and then the little gremlins send him away on his own. Now, after Not Gandalf leaves, his magic takes effect, and the surrounding area is transformed from a barren wasteland to a Middle-earth Whole Foods. Hooray! The guy they've consistently treated like garbage and now exiled has saved them yet again. So shortly after, the evil wizards who have been tracking Not Gandalf all season show up. While the Harfoots hide, the wizards seem to be tracing Not Gandalf's magic to determine where he went. That's when Nori gets the bright idea to pop out of hiding and attempt to lie to the group of evil wizards about which way Not Gandalf went. But what's so dumb about this is that the wizards had already pointed in the direction he had gone, and Nori saw this. She knew before she opened her mouth that they would know she was lying. Yet she still thought it was a good idea to antagonize the group of evil wizards. It did not end well. And now we arrive at the scene we've all been waiting to mock since the trailer. Largo's inspirational speech. Unfortunately, however, this scene was so filled with hypocrisy, so disconnected from the events we've seen, that it just made me angry. Amazon couldn't even let me enjoy mocking their terrible show. The next time we see the Harfoots, right, they are moping around the ashes of their settlement. Thanks, Nori. So Largo launches into a speech designed to boost everyone's morale and remind them what it means to be a Harfoot.
Look, we don't slay dragons. Not much for digging jewels. But there's one thing we can do, I warn, better than any creature in all Middle-earth. We stay true to each other. No matter how the path winds, or how steep it gets, we face it with our hearts even bigger than our feet. And we just keep walking.
The problem is that what the writers want the Harfoots to be, and what they've actually shown us they are two different things completely. Remember, this is coming from the guy who has spent every episode since he hurt his foot terrified that he and his family would be left to die because they can't keep up with the caravan. It's absolutely absurd that he would get up and say that what Harfoots do best is stay true to each other. These are people who will happily allow their supposed friends to die because of mild injuries. His family, his wife and child, only survived because a non-Harfoot helped them move their cart while he was injured. Yet here he is, praising the ethics of Harfoot culture, the culture that nearly murdered his family. It's completely inconsistent with what we've seen over the course of 7 episodes. And finally, let's see what idiocy Khazad-dûm has to offer. Not as much as the Southlands, it turns out, but that's not exactly high praise at this point. So when we last left Elrond and Durin, the fate of the entire elven race was dependent on their ability to convince Durin's father to dig for Mithril. The elves need the light of the Valor they contain to survive. But unsurprisingly, the king refuses. And this is where the problems begin. You see, it's clear that we're supposed to see the king's actions as unreasonable and side with Durin. But yet again, the writers give us absolutely no reason to do so. The king's reasoning is sound. No one has denied that digging for Mithril is incredibly dangerous. And as the leader of the dwarves, he can't justify sacrificing dwarven lives to save elven lives. And remember, ultimately, this isn't about whether the elves will live or die. It's whether they can remain in Middle-earth or have to go to eternal paradise in Valinor, which is basically Elf Valhalla. So if the writers want us to side with Durin and Elrond, they have to give us a viable alternative to dead dwarves. Durin and Elrond should have discovered a way to safely mine from Mithril, making the King's Order unreasonable. Or maybe just include in the deal that the elves have to mine the ore themselves. If they want to stay in Middle-earth, the least they can do is put their own lives at risk. But neither of these things happen. Elrond and Durin just dig as normal, ignoring the King's orders until they get caught. And then we're shown the Balrog at the bottom of the mine. As it stands now, yeah, it sucks for the elves, but the king isn't wrong. Mining for Mithril is incredibly dangerous. More dangerous than any of them realize even. At the heart of so many problems with Rings of Power is a disconnect between what the writers intend and what they actually show on the screen. Things they think make a character look strong or tough or clever come off to normal people as the exact opposite. They want Arondir to appear intelligent, so they have him casually ruin a chess match between two strangers as he's walking by. They want the Harfoots to be seen as loving and communally focused, so they have them leave their injured behind to die. They want Galadriel to seem like a strong, competent leader, and they show her running her exhausted men to death in the bitter cold. At every turn, the writers undermine how their own characters are viewed by the audience, and it's incredibly frustrating. Anyway, I'm done ranting now. I'm going to go watch House of the Dragon.